Hello, Initiate. Are you feeling much more, put together? Good. Would hate to see such a promising new member fail to strengthen their spirit. Now that you're whole, how about we continue our previous lesson on the history of this world? With the imprisonment of the four primordial beings that would later be called the Horsemen, famine, conquest, war, and death, the dragons essentially became the greatest powers in the cosmos, free to once more explore it without the fear of primordial beings ending all of existence. A freedom they strangely chose not to explore, for these beings were enthralled by the new world formed of Balance's very being, a world that they would eventually call Ea. Not only was this world uniquely shaped by balance over the eons, but it was full to bursting of this strange substance known as life, a tide of ever-evolving creatures that was capable of change in what to them was a blink of an eye. However, this blink of an eye became an issue, as these dragons were far too vast, both physically and metaphysically, to truly appreciate this life. How they wished to revel in the observation of something as small as a leaf or a microbe, and see life slowly change in timescales we would call mortal. So great was this wish, that in order to truly appreciate life, they must join with it. These dragons soon began crafting new bodies formed of the primordial elements, fire, wind, earth, and water, and eventually learned to incorporate balance itself within these forms, allowing them to experience things unique to life, such as breathing. Unfortunately, as they continued to create more and more lifelike forms, their new bodies were unable to contain the vast cosmic essences they once contained. Some of this essence was released back into the void, but a significant amount of it was released into the world itself, further enhancing the world's native creatures. The release of essence weakened these dragons significantly, but to them this was a small price to pay to experience the beautiful life of this world. Besides, the horsemen were contained, and it was believed no power could rival them in the cosmos. Still, the dragons weren't fools. Two of them chose to remain in their cosmic forms, sacrificing their enjoyment of the beauty of life to protect their far weaker kin from a threat even they might not be able to foresee. As much as these dragons attempted to mimic life, there was one aspect of it that utterly eluded them: procreation. When two dragons mated, what was produced from their eggs were creatures that were little more than beasts, not only of limited intelligence, but far, far weaker than its parent dragons. These creatures became the wyverns, and other draconic subspecies you might have seen in your living life. The dragons soon discovered that to truly birth a dragon, the mated pair must transfer a portion of their very essence into the egg, weakening the parents, and creating a child that was slightly weaker than its sires, a dilution of power that over many generations formed the various species of dragons we know of today. As beautiful as Ea was, it was not always peaceful, for although war was contained, its abyssal host still lurked in the world's molten core, and occasionally they would rise up, not only attacking as a legion, but also corrupting the many protocultures that had evolved on Ea over the eons. The dragons would eventually put these demons in their place, for although they were weakened, the dragons were still far more powerful than these leaderless hordes. And as for the corrupted civilizations, you can see their ruins in the form of scorched remains that dot this world. This vigilance allowed balance to further lull destruction into a deeper and deeper slumber. And who knows, maybe in a few more eons, destruction would have fallen into a sleep it would never have awoken from, and life would have had a pleasant eternity to grow and evolve. Sadly, such a fate was not to be, for at some point in Ea's history, a new form of life outside of Balance's influence arrived, the beings known as the Exiles. Now before I continue, I should mention that all I am about to tell you is gathered from information I have been able to piece together over the years, so there are some gaps in my knowledge about these Exiles. But what I do know shows them as a people that although may share the same general shape and needs as us humans, they are people who are truly alien. In a distant corner of the cosmos, a world had at some point birthed life. How this occurred is unknown. However, the description of the star it circled, which many had described as baleful, makes me think that perhaps it, like Conquest and its kin, was awakened. but instead of joining Conquest's army, chose to remain isolated and manipulate this world. Of course, this is just my theory, and there is no way to know for sure. Whatever the origins of life on this world, it soon birthed a people that would become that world's masters, using knowledge and craft so advanced that it would have made the civilizations of today seem like ignorant stone-wielding tribes in comparison. And whether due to natural ability or their advanced knowledge and tools, these people were all essentially ageless. So much so that a strict birth limit was placed on every individual to prevent overpopulation, a limit enforced by a strict hierarchy and class system. At its top were the royal lines, followed by the religious, merchant, and art castes, and then the lowly soldier and worker classes. Despite their advanced society, a threat had come upon them that challenged their mastery, a force of destruction that would eventually overrun their world, that even now the Exiles refused to speak of. The Exiles arrogantly believed this was a threat they would eventually overcome. So sure were they that despite the threat of this great enemy, the first Exiles to cross the ways, their method of cosmic travel, to visit Ea, were explorers and scholars, the wealthy noble classes of their homeworld funding these trips for simple curiosity, as their world was fighting for its survival. These explorers crafting the small structures that would be the precursors of the spires, the large biological towers we know of today. But when it became obvious this great enemy could not be beaten, the presence of Exiles on Ea increased substantially. Dozens of spires began popping up all over the world, as now soldiers, workers, and administrators crossed the ways in search of safety, until the sovereign, the supreme ruler of the Exiles, arrived. And once he did, he shattered the ways, ensuring that no one else from their homeworld could follow, consigning the existing population, perhaps millions upon millions of souls, to whatever dark fate awaited them. The sovereign claimed it was a necessary sacrifice to save their people, but it was no surprise to many that despite this sacrifice, almost all of the sovereign's noble lineage made it through, as well as their personal soldiers and servants, not to mention a substantial number of the religious and artisan caste. Of those of the lower caste, the soldiers and laborers, only a tiny fraction was saved. The religious caste, to their credit, admonished the sovereign's actions, saying more lives could have been saved if only the sovereign had listened to his advisors sooner, instead of believing in his own superiority. As for those of the lower caste, they saw it as a great betrayal, but not an unexpected one, as the sovereign's dismissive attitude towards those he considered lesser was well known, causing harsh feelings that those of the lower caste were forced to bury, as they became focused on surviving in this harsh new world. With the ways gone, the Exiles were now trapped in a hostile environment, forced to live in the spires not only to be safe from dangerous wildlife, but also protect themselves from the very air and earth around them. Their foreign bodies would need to adapt in order to call this new world home. And in order to accomplish this, they returned to the ancient art known as life binding. Life binding is an ability innate to Exiles, which allows them to bond with other forms of life, and have them share gifts, strengths, and traits. It is a long and arduous process that could take months or years to see results, and was largely abandoned by the Exiles in the distant past, seen as more of a spiritual and ceremonial process that was under the purview of the religious caste. But now, in a hostile world without their crafts to master it, the sovereign demanded its use under his control, an action that displeased the religious caste, who decried such a use as blasphemy. Additionally, without the advancements of their home world, the Exiles were forced to return to the use of basic tools and crude labor, which of course meant a required increase in the decimated labor caste. So the sovereign gifted the labor and soldier caste full reproductive rights, a task those castes took with great eagerness. The sovereign was pleased, seeing only an increase in the number of his servants, but what he should have seen was the start of his doom, for without a common enemy to keep them united, the shattering of the Exile's social structure and his power would soon begin, started by a war between the Exiles and the Dragons of Ea. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this second video on the background lore of Conquest, the last argument of kings. If you like this vid, please like, subscribe, comment, press that little bell so that the YouTube gods know I exist, and hopefully more people can see my content and find out more about this wonderful game. And if you really like it and you're inclined, and if you have a little cash in your pocket, please consider sending a little money away to my Patreon or my Ko-fi account. The extra money gives a chance to work on these stories I love. Anyway, thanks for listening/watching, and see you next time.